Sorry, you all, I didn't finish number 8 because I wanted to talk more about White's chapter 5 and a little bit about what's going to be on the midterm. So this is video 8.1, and my last question was which rule didn't I agree with, and that was number 20, but I thought I'd go through the other rules just a tad, not too much. Place yourself in the background. So that makes sense. Write in a way that comes naturally. Some of you try to use too many euphemisms, make it sound fancy. Please, just be yourself. It's much more interesting. Work from a suitable design. Of course, you're going to have pre-writing, a scratch outline, something. Number 4, write with nouns and verbs. Most of you do that, so that's not one for you to worry about. Doesn't mean you shouldn't read the rule. Excuse me, reminder. Revise and rewrite. Number 5, of course. This is the part you probably don't like to do, but it's the most important. Number 8, do not overwrite. Oh, I've gotten some essays where it goes on and on. Here's an example I'll never forget. It was so bad. I picked up my girlfriend from Los Angeles International Airport Terminal 4 on Delta Airlines Flight 1794, arriving at 8:33 p.m. But it didn't arrive until 8:34 p.m. And it just went on like that. And geez, really, just say I picked up my girlfriend at the airport. Get it over with. Do not overstate, Rule 17. Number 8, avoid the use of qualifiers. I brought that up with your first introductory essay. And you saw in one of the previous videos, I used a qualifier and then corrected myself. I love Strunk's writing here. Rather, very little pretty. These are the leeches that infest the pond of prose, sucking the blood of words. So how can you forget that one? Number 9, do not affect a breezy manner. Now here we have a problem with using words that are out of date. He's talking about slang here. Do not use slang. So he should have chosen a word that is more common, like casual manner. And so you know not to use slang. So here's an example. I won't read it all to you. It's so bad. Well, guys, here I am dishing the dirt about your disorderly classmates after passing a weekend in the Big Apple, trying to catch the Columbia hoops tilt, etc. That's bad writing. Number 10, use orthodox spelling. Well, of course, you're not going to use bad spelling because you have the luck of using a spell checker on your word processor, which White and Strunk did not have. Aren't you lucky? Just remember to use it. I have students who forget to use it. Number 11, do not explain too much. Number 12, do not construct awkward adverbs. I did that. At the end of video 8, I said, I will see you soonly. That's not a word that exists. I constructed an awkward adverb. Number 13, make sure the reader knows who is speaking. Now, this is for fiction writing. Have you ever had to, when you read a fiction book, like count and figure out who was speaking? So a good fiction writer will make sure that you can tell who's speaking. So that's what number 12 is talking about. 14, avoid fancy words. I've been complaining about not using euphemisms, and you need to not use euphemisms. This is also the number 14 where he talks about how the rule for putting a preposition at the end of the sentence is changed. Number 15, do not use dialect unless your ear is good. Now that would be for writing fiction. So sometimes you will see in fiction where you use apostrophe for something that's left out and you're using dialect. Don't worry about it for English 1 because we're not writing any dialect. Number 16, be clear. Oh, wow. Duh. Number 17, do not inject opinion. I've already talked about that. You should have opinion, but you don't inject it where it's not needed. Number 18, use figures of speech sparingly. So figures of speech, there's about 17 of them that you find in poetry, but this is nonfiction writing, and we use a very few. We use metaphors and similes, hyperbole, which is overstatement or understatement, but the others we don't use. And then be careful that you don't use cliches, because those are metaphors and similes that are overused and have become boring. Do not take shortcuts at the cost of clarity. And here he talks about not using abbreviations, which I've talked to you about. Number 20, remember, I don't agree with it. Avoid foreign languages. And BTW, we don't call them foreign languages anymore. We're called modern languages. Do you see the difference? Calling it foreign language makes it other, but instead we call it modern language, so it's inclusive. So we call Latin and Greek classical languages. So at Santa Monica College, we have a modern language department. We do not have a classical language department. UCLA has both. So classical language would be ancient Greek, Roman, Sanskrit, and other languages of which I'm no expert on. I have trouble speaking English some days. 21, prefer the standard to the offbeat. And that's his list of reminders, which are kind of like rules, aren't they? So then we have Strunk and White's book. Now, in earlier lessons, I've taught you about framing quotations. Framing quotations is where your words introduce the quotation and where your words explain the quotation afterwards. So on page 84 is a good example of framing quotations. White does a good job. 84. Style takes its final shape more from attitudes of mind than from principles of composition. For, as an elderly practitioner once remarked, quote, writing is an act of faith, not a trick of grammar, unquote. This moral observation would have no place in a rule book were it not that style is the writer, and therefore what you are rather than what you know will at last determine your style. So do you see he introduced the quotation, gave the quotation, and then described it afterwards. Now I have one complaint. For as an elderly practitioner once remarked, I think that's an insult. Couldn't he say a wise, experienced practitioner, or even better, give the person's name? It's almost as if White made that up. So when we introduce a quotation, it's better to give the person's name and maybe some of their resume. For instance, as Jung Yoon said in the New York Times, something like that. And of course you would put New York Times in italics because you're expert at things doing like that. So any questions on the book, email me. Now, the midterm. The midterm is an open book, but you won't be able to answer the questions unless you've read the book, because searching through the pages will take up time. You have an hour and a half to do the midterm. There'll be short essay questions, about yay long. And on the grammar part of the book that I didn't discuss, I will grade you on the grammar because you should have. It's a review for everything you should know. So I'll ask some concrete questions and some philosophical questions. So I might say, prove to me that Strunk was friendly. That would be a concrete question. And a philosophical question might be, is it ever right to change somebody's original writing? I will have a Strunk and White review during office hours. The date will be announced. If you can't attend that review, it will be recorded, and I will send you the link by email. Any questions? Email me. I'm only a click away. If I'm not asleep. If I'm asleep, forget it.